What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Young Guns. Today we have Jackson Reed from Kansas, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Jeffrey. Thanks for coming on, gentlemen.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me.
So obviously this has been a historic year for the Kansas Jayhawks. They're making their first bowl since 2008,
hmm
and they had College Game Day come to Lawrence for football. Just tell me about how awesome it's been to be at KU during this season.
Man, it's one of those feelings where it's kind of like you don't get to describe it, you kind of have to feel it, kind of thing. Man, I said when coming into this season, if the sky falls and everything goes bad, this team gets 1 2 wins because you knew you're going to beat Tennessee Tech. But outside of that, there was nothing guaranteed, especially with this football team. There was nothing guaranteed. And if things go okay, middle of the road, you win 3 to 4 games, and if everything goes right and goes great, you win 5 to 6. And in my opinion, things didn't go perfectly right. Obviously, with Jalen Daniels getting injured and all that, everything didn't go right, but they still won 5 to 6 games. But it definitely gives me a positive vibe on where the team is heading and the direction that the program is going overall. But it's one of those things where it's like having college game day in your backyard at a traditional basketball school. It was nuts. It was crazy. They did lose that game, but still, it's been an incredible year, and I can't wait to see how this all plays out tomorrow at the Liberty Bowl, about 24 hours from now.
Mm-hmm.
What were the expectations from the fan base for Kansas this year? Did most of the fan base think that they were going to win 3 4 games,
Yeah.
what was it?
We 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 thought probably about 2.5, 3 games would be about our threshold because we felt like we could get it done against an Iowa State. We knew we were going to beat Tennessee Tech team we played to open the year. But outside of that, like again, you had no real guaranteed wins. Everybody thought we were going to beat Texas, but that didn't exactly go as planned. But yeah, 2.5, 3 wins, kind of what everyone was expecting when they saw the schedule and they looked at the team, they looked at the depth chart, and obviously they doubled that up and almost were bowl eligible in the first 6 weeks of the year, but obviously didn't turn out that way. But yeah, coming into the season, we were expecting probably 2 to 3 wins, and I would have been happy with that honestly, because obviously you won 2 games last year, one barely against an FCS school, and in double overtime against Texas. So it's been wins have not been at a premium, obviously, and they've been hard to come by. So to win how many they did and in the fashion they did was definitely an exceeding expectations type year for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you guys beat West Virginia, and then you beat Houston. Like
Mhm.
what with those with the West Virginia win? Did you guys knew you had something special going into tough environments such as Morgantown and getting a
Mm.
win there?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to be able to cover this team and show up to some practices and press conferences, and just everything about this year felt different because, and I think I knew something was different in the FCS game when you're playing Tennessee Tech. This is a team that went 3-7 in FBS last year. They weren't very good, but you get the chance to prove how good you are, and then they go out and demolish Tennessee Tech. And last year they played South Dakota and beat them on a game winning drive. They scored with about a minute and a half left, and you can just tell that the way that the football team carried themselves from the 2020 to 21 season to this season is entirely different. And I think that's very visible, even to people that don't follow Kansas football. You can just tell, like they walk with a different swagger, and they know they were good, and they knew they had a chance in every single game. Where I don't think I could say the same my freshman year, which would have been last season.
Mm-hmm.
How magnificent of a job has Lance Leopold done as the head coach of Kansas?
Man, I can't say enough about that guy. I'm from Wisconsin, and so when the Wisconsin job opened up, thank God, Kansas and Travis Goff, the athletic director, got Lance Leipold locked up for the long term. He's staying until 2027, I believe, but has options until 2029. So it says so much to him as this is someone that's not only going to turn your program around. He's not going to just turn your program around and just dip out and go to, well, there's all kinds of opportunities. You guys know Colorado and Auburn and bigger. Let's be honest, bigger opportunities opened up, and we figured it would be that way. Wisconsin, Nebraska, names of the like. But it says a lot about how Lance Leipold is as not only a football coach but as a person, staying around and not only continuing to build this program, but he he wants this football team and this program to believe that they can win every game. And this year was the stepping stone of that. And obviously they're in a bowl game tomorrow. So I think I can't say enough about how talented of a football coach Lance Leipold and his staff too. Don't discredit Andy Kotelnicki and Brian Borland too. The OC and the DC. They have all done a fantastic job this year.
So this is the best win total since '09, right? Like way better than '09. But like
Yes,
the last time you guys went to a bowl game was '08.
that's
And
right.
then for the first time since '08, you clinched bowl eligibility by giving Oklahoma State the what for with a 37-16 victory.
Yep.
Like, what was the feeling like after the game?
Man, as a student, I wasn't in town, but I had seen videos from friends and a bunch of people. They took the goalpost down and they dumped it in the lake that sits behind the football stadium. I mean, it was almost no, I can't say that. I was gonna say it's almost as big as when we won the national championship, but that's not true. I would probably say like when we made the final four, like last year, and the bowl game. I feel like those were the two biggest thing. Like those are about as equal as I can get. It's just like it's one of those things where it's just like you're pushing the rock so far uphill, and right when you think you have something going with this football program, it just seemed to kind of stop in its tracks. And the bowl game was your threshold this year. Obviously, Kansas was not looking to go and win a national championship or going to win and compete in the Big 12. They were going, and if you made a bowl game, that means almost everything went right. And to be entirely honest, to say that it didn't go entirely right, they dropped some games that they probably shouldn't have, but they made a bowl game. The vibe around campus was just unmatched. It was incredible.
Man, it was a beautiful. I mean, like you do something that no other team's done since Lord knows how long, which was
Right.
beat the team in double digits in overtime. Like the fact that you beat West Virginia to double digits in overtime, that was a sign of, oh man, big things are to come for Kansas, And then you beat, a group of five favorite that was favored to get to New Year's Six Bowl in the preseason in
Mhm.
at Houston, right?
At their place, yep.
Yeah, future Big 12 team, right? So that's
Right.
and to my next question is on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, one being the worst. Where
Uh-huh.
would you rate the 2022 season for the
Ooh.
Kansas Jayhawks? Oh, and by the way, the Missouri Tigers chickened out on you guys by not.
That yeah. So I watched the Arkansas side of this. So I knew this question was coming, and I had thought about this all day. I swear. Honestly, I'd probably say I'm going to go 8.5 if I can do decimals. I think because you lost your starting quarterback. I mean, Jalen Daniels was gone for an extended period of time, and if he wasn't, I don't know what this team would have done in Big 12 play, but I sure as heck would have loved to see it, and I'm thankful that I get to see it next year. Assuming JD stays healthy, but and man, to play Missouri in a bowl game, especially how fun would that have been? Right? These two are
Yeah,
rivals. This is. I mean, so I'm again not from Kansas. I came to Kansas for sports journalism, so I was not aware of this whole Kansas Missouri thing until I got here. Man, these two hate each other, like both sides. They just despise each other. And listen, Missouri and Wake Forest. That's also a good matchup. I watched the game. It was an entertaining. But man, it's just when you have an opportunity like that, you can't pass it up. And I understand that I'm kind of being salty and spoiled because it is coming back. They are playing each other in 2024 at Arrowhead Stadium, and that is going to be awesome. I can't wait for that. But man, I really wish we would have got the chance to play Missouri. But I'm also excited to play Arkansas. And anytime a team of this, of coming from the SEC, because we all know the SEC is up here and everybody else is about right there. So
right.
it's fun to play a team from the SEC, and I'm excited. I'm excited to play Arkansas,
But
but I
yeah,
wish we did play Missouri.
there was a great chance of it happening for Kansas, Missouri to reunite, right?
Totally, totally.
Reddit College Football was talking about it happening on Twitter, right? But then
Yep,
guess who's the first to respond? The Liberty Bowl. They're like,
we want that. Let's
yeah,
do that.
yeah, because I mean, it should have happened. And by the way, another big high that you guys had was College Game Day going to Lawrence, Kansas. Like
Yep.
when you play, I mean, yeah, you lost TCU, but still though,
Yeah.
College Game Day going to Lawrence, Kansas.
it almost felt like, because there were a couple toward the tail end of the season. Let's be honest. I feel like a couple of them, they were kind of checking boxes to check boxes, like the Montana one. Like, yes, it was cool, but like, it kind of just felt like they were kind of just there to check the box. But that was one of the best games of that week. I mean, it was 19 versus 14, or in that realm of something like that. That was a top 25 matchup, and that was probably the first time that we've had that since 2008. But yeah, it definitely didn't feel like College Game Day was here to check a box. It felt like they were here because these are two good football teams playing each other, and of course, TC's playing for a national championship against in that college football playoff come New Year's Eve. So obviously, they've had a good year. So yeah, I mean, it's just an incredible year to not only be a Kansas Jayhawk, but to be a Kansas Jayhawk fan. And a lot of these football fans, like grandpappy and grandmommy have seen Kansas go to a legit bowl game once since since they've been around, and you're finally getting to see probably the biggest transition in a football program. I would argue out of everybody, maybe James Madison would be another one that would come to my head, but those would be the two that I would probably put up there, and I'm biased, of course.
Yeah, that TCU Kansas game, everybody was joking about how that should have been the big noon kickoff game. Because, I mean, it was a big deal, and that game got shelved to FS1 because it's two non-brands. But I agree, that was a big game, and Game Day did deserve to be there. Because to your point, Game Day sometimes goes to games that they shouldn't, but they just do it for other reasons. It's a FCS rivalry or an HBCU event or something like that, and it makes sense. But that game did deserve to be on Game Day. That was an awesome game for sure. And to your point, I was actually going to be one of my next questions was how you mentioned Jalen Daniels. When he was playing before he got hurt, Kansas was really good. I mean, you lost by 7 to a playoff team. Right. I mean, even though TCU's maybe not one of the 4 best teams, that's arguable, but they're still so solid, found ways to win. But when he got hurt, Jason Bean, he's a really solid quarterback, but he just does not provide what Jalen Daniels does. How many games do you think Kansas could have won if Jason Bean did not get hurt? Not Jason Bean, but Jalen Daniels. And Jason Bean
I got you.
Yeah.
So if I'm assuming Jalen Daniels plays 12 games, I've got to backtrack. I think we beat Baylor in Waco. I think Oklahoma was too due, if that makes any kind of sense. I think they would have still won that game if we had Jalen Daniels playing quarterback. I think we would have beat who do we lose to that I can't think of right now? Let me take a look. Baylor for sure. Oh, yeah, Texas Tech, that one got away from us. We should have probably won that game. And I think that honestly might have been it. So add 2 to that and make it an 8-win season. And again, I mean, it's still his junior year, and he's coming back for one more year. I'm assuming. I don't think he's going to go to the draft. It wouldn't make any sense. But yeah, I'm really excited because, man, Jalen Daniels just provides a spark to that football team. A Jalen Daniels led Kansas and a Jason Bean led Kansas. One person shouldn't make that much difference, but it really does. And Jason Bean's a great runner, but the biggest knock on him is he just can't throw the ball that far downfield. And when you have wide receivers like Kansas does, who are actually pretty good, it kind of takes that element of the game away. And yes, their running game is just fine. Probably sits in the middle of the Big 12. It's tough because you don't have that element of we could throw it and we can take the top off of the defense, which again, you guys know happens a lot in the Big 12. But Kansas didn't have that element this year without Jalen Daniels.
I agree with you 100% because you just look at Jason Bean. He's just, again, a solid quarterback. I mean, he played for Kansas last year, and even though Kansas was nowhere near as good as they were this year, he helped them win the Texas game. Yep. So, I mean, he has it in him. But like you said, Jalen Daniels, it's kind of like almost not the same thing, but it's almost the Cade McNamara, J.J. McCarthy thing, where it's like
I wish we had one of those guys, but yeah.
Jalen Daniels just gives you more than Jason Bean.
Totally.
Like J.J. McCarthy does with Cade McNamara. I agree.
Totally.
How did you see him grow from last year to this year?
Oh, man. Jalen Daniels as 2 things, a leader and a passer. We always knew that Jalen Daniels could use his feet and extend plays, and that's what I think Kansas kind of provides or prides themselves on that. All their quarterbacks can do that, and that's great. But that doesn't really mean much if you can't roll out of the pocket and throw the football. But Jalen Daniels has become like from here to about here. And there's another level that he can get to. And I'm not going to sit here and say Jalen Daniels is one of the better quarterbacks in the country. It's just not true. But he's, as a leader, and as a thrower. I mean, Jalen Daniels, you guys have seen it. He's been able to escape the pocket and extend plays and find receivers, and that's just been the biggest thing. Is because normally 2020 Kansas, you try to extend that play and you get sacked, you lose 10 yards, and there goes your drive. But it hasn't been that way. And Jalen Daniels has, like, I've talked about it. He's been a spark plug for the team. The team carries himself differently when Jalen Daniels is their quarterback. That's just the truth. It is what it is. It is how it is. No disrespect to Jason Bean. It's just how it goes. But I think those are the two things that I've really noticed from sophomore year Jalen to junior year Jalen. He's just such a better leader, and he's just a lot better at throwing the football.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are the strengths and weaknesses of Kansas that people need to look out for when watching the Liberty Bowl between Kansas and Arkansas?
Okay. When you're watching the Liberty Bowl, you're going to watch a lot of Rocket Sanders running right down our throat, and you're going to watch a lot of KJ Jefferson running right down our throat because they can't stop the run or stop anybody for that matter. I mean, this defense has shown points in the season where they've been good. Oklahoma State's a prime example. Then again, they weren't playing Spencer Sanders. They were playing Garrett Rangel, but still. Um, Another good example is Iowa State, but they couldn't move the ball against anybody this year, so that's not really, But I just think defensively, I think Kansas is passable in the passing game when they drop back in coverage. I think they're okay, and they've been able to get to the quarterback against pretty much every team they've played outside of Texas. But I think when you look at their run defense, it's just not good. And you guys have talked about it with your Arkansas guy. We're last in the Big 12 in run defense, and I know that it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. And Arkansas is going to take advantage of that. And that was our number one question as Kansas fans and Kansas journalists when we got Arkansas is, oh yeah, that's right. They've got that big guy quarterback that nobody on our team is going to figure out how to tackle. So how are we going to figure out how to tackle him? So to be completely frank, I expect KJ Jefferson to have a big game because he is so versatile. You guys know, and he knows how to use his feet, and I expect him to do a lot of that, a lot of quarterback draw stuff. But I think Arkansas is going to run it right down Kansas's throat because they can, and so I feel like that's going to be your biggest weakness. For biggest strength, Jalen Daniels. As funny as that sounds. I mean, it's been magical, really. But Jalen Daniels adds another element to that offense, and of course, the Lawrence native Devin Neal in the backfield at running back. He's been great this year too. Not to undermine anything he's done. But this team's got a pretty good running game too, and we can't overlook that. But I think with an extra month of practice, which this team hasn't had a practice in the month of December since I was in kindergarten. I'm 20. It's just like I think it's going to be such a big difference. And again, with the offense that they have, I think they're going to be able to put up a lot of points as they've done for a good chunk of the year. So I think your biggest strength, offense, your weakness, your biggest weakness for sure is run defense.
Oh man! So the last time Kansas had a wing season, you were 6 years old in 2008. Man, that is wow.
Yep. It's hard to put things in perspective like that, but that's just how it goes.
Yeah, it's like Coach Leipold, or is it Leipold?
Leipold, Lance Leipold.
Thank you. So
yeah, I got you.
The future for Kansas, right? Do you see nothing but up in the future, like especially with like the 1 year or 2 years of Texas Oklahoma, but then once Texas Oklahoma leave, do you think that road to the Big 12 title game gets easier for Kansas?
Well, the short answer would be well, yes, but no. Yes, because I believe the program is trending in the right direction, and I believe that Lance Leipold has shown. I mean, you guys have seen Craig Young transfer from Ohio State, Kalon Gervin transfer from Michigan State. He's made the right moves in the transfer portal, and that's a non-deniable thing because this team is not good enough to win on recruits. It's not an Oklahoma. It's not a Texas. It's not a team that can win with recruits. So, it sounds kind of bad for me to say this, but picking up the scraps of the big teams that are put by the wayside is going to be how this team is built because Craig Young had 5 tackles his year at Ohio State, transfers to Kansas as the best linebacker on the team before training camp even starts. So I think with the evolution of the transfer portal and how good Lance Leipold has been in the first 2 years of the transfer portal, yes, I think it gets a little bit easier. But no, because of course there's more teams being added. There's 2 being subtracted and 2 being added, in which 4 being added, which adds an extra 2. So the Big 12 actually has 12 teams now, not 10. But BYU, I believe, is also trending in the right direction. Houston has had a down year, but I believe in them. I think they're going to trend in the right direction too. And these are all the new additions. Of course, you got K-State up in Manhattan. They have done tremendous for themselves this year. They've got a very tough draw in Alabama for their bowl game, but they're trending in the right direction too. But as far as if you're looking at just Kansas's program, yes, they are making the right trends to get to ideally a Big 12 title game. And I think I don't know that that's your immediate goal, but I think it's definitely something that's achievable here in the next couple of years before Texas and Oklahoma head to the SEC.
I think you basically answered my question of what I was going to ask next. What you said with Jackson's question about the strengths and weaknesses, because I was going to ask whether you thought the offense matched better with the defense matched up with the offense, but clearly it's the offense. But to your point about KJ Jefferson, I will say that I agree that is a bad matchup for Kansas. To me, the Missouri draw would have been a better draw for Kansas anyway to win. I think Kansas can beat Arkansas for sure, but yes, KJ Jefferson is going to be a really tough draw. Since, like you said, Kansas really struggles at tackling, what should Kansas do on defense to stop him if they struggle at tackling?
Well, I think the obvious answer would be swarm the ball, because if you watch the film of the Texas game, they've got this guy named Bijan Robinson. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. He's pretty good. So they'd give him the ball, and and when Texas puts a hat on a hat, and you have a Bijan Robinson in the open field against one guy, it's not going to turn out well for you. And it didn't. Obviously, Bijan ran for 248, I want to say, which is nuts. So in order for that to not happen, I think you have to double it up. You have to put 2 hats on 1 hat, which it gives you a little bit of not as much leeway in the passing game. But Kansas has been okay defending the pass this year. But defending the run, you got to put 2 hats. You got to find a way to get pressure early in the game and make him uncomfortable. KJ Jefferson, again, plays in the SEC, so he's used to seeing pressure, and he's used to trying to develop his game in other ways to where he can be effective, and he's done that well. But what I think you can do with KJ Jefferson is find a way to make him uncomfortable, force some bad throws, and if he does end up getting out of the pocket, you got to put 2 hats on 1 hat. So I think those are your 2 main keys into containing him. And again, it's not going to be easy. KJ Jefferson is great and was a dark horse Heisman contender when the season started, and that's for a reason. KJ is a great player, and this is going to be a tough matchup, as you said. Again, would have really liked to play Mizzou because they don't have KJ Jefferson. So, it's going to be a tough matchup, but I think it's doable for sure.
Mm-hmm. How big was that Texas win last year? How big was that win in Austin help propel the team to the season that it has this year?
It's a program changer. It gives you the belief, because let's say you lose that game. You finished the year 1-11. Your only win was to an FCS team by a field goal. You're like, well, damn. We won 1 game, and it was to an FCS school on a game-winning drive, and we lost every other game. You don't have much of a sense of belief. But if you look at the games that were after that Texas game, you've got that TCU game played very close. The West Virginia game on Senior Day at Kansas, super close. Those are every single game after that Texas game was a 1-possession game at the back end of Big 12 play. And that also gives you that leeway because at halftime they switched from Bean to Daniels, and now you're like, okay, now we really got something going here. Now we really got something. So that game is a big time. We put the pieces together game, and then they've spent that, to their credit, they've spent the offseason putting the puzzle together, adding transfers, and getting some key guys to come back. Sam Bird, a nose tackle, most of that offensive line, who has been incredibly good, may I add, since Lance Leipold has taken over. And they've put all the pieces together, and they've done what they've could. Kenny Logan's missed a couple games, who's a big time safety for Kansas. Jalen's missed those games, and they put this puzzle together, and it's spit out a 6-6 season. And I think no one is upset with a 6-6 season in Lawrence.
What do you think the ceiling and the floor is for Kansas football next year?
Oh, that's a good question. The ceiling, the ceiling would be 8-4. I think 8-4. Yeah, probably 8-4, because Kansas, for once, has actually scheduled a tough non-conference opponent. And they've got Illinois coming into town next year to open our season. So, or second week of our season. So that's going to be a tough matchup, and I think that's where you're really going to figure out where you stack up. Like, how good are you going to be? Are you going to beat Illinois? Or are you going to start the year 1-1 and you're going into Houston, which we host Houston too? So it's a tough non-con schedule, definitely tougher than it was this year. But I think 8-4 is your ceiling. I think 4-8 is your floor, because you've seen it when things look bad for Kansas. It's back to the 2020, like it's bad. Like the Texas game, that was the worst I've seen the Kansas football team play in a while. I mean, that just didn't look like the Kansas we've seen this whole year. So when it's bad, it's bad. But when it's good, it looks pretty dang good out there. So I think 4-8 is your floor, 8-4 is your ceiling. I think they'll land somewhere in between there. I won't make an official prediction, but I think that's your range you're looking at.
Yeah. Two things I have to ask. One, is Kansas the new Iowa State, where they have been with where Iowa State's been with Matt Campbell? And number two, what are the keys to a Kansas victory in the Liberty Bowl?
Well, is Kansas the new Iowa State? I feel like you're not far off there. I like that comparison now that I'm thinking about it more in my head, because Matt Campbell's done a terrific job. He's been a guy that's been floating around in NFL head coaching jobs, and that's for a reason. Matt Campbell's a great head coach. I wish we had the talent that Iowa State has had. Like, I wish we had a Breece Hall and a Brock Purdy, but we don't. But I think that's kind of the direction they're headed, right? Like, I think an 8-4, 9-3, and then you step up and then you make that one senior year big run to a Big 12 championship, and maybe that's a possibility for Kansas. I can't make that call just yet, but I definitely think that's a possibility. I definitely wouldn't rule that out. And then secondly, what do I think? I just have a feeling this game is going to feature a ton of points tomorrow, and I'm not sure what Vegas thinks. I know we're +3. Well, the last time I looked, but I don't know what they feel points wise. I just think Kansas is going to score a lot. Arkansas has looked suspect defensively, and as Big 12 of me as this might sound, I think you might have to outscore this team to beat them. And I think Kansas, if it gets to a shootout, that plays right into Kansas's lap, right? I think Kansas can definitely outlast Arkansas in a shootout. And if it gets to that, I think that Kansas is in a good spot. So I think your key to the game is just make sure you don't fall into Arkansas's game. Don't fall into the running game. You're not gonna beat Arkansas going run for run with them. And that's just not how it's gonna work. So I think if Kansas plays the game, they can win.
Oh yeah, and another thing is, like, how relieved were you when Lance Leipold didn't get tempted by Wisconsin and Nebraska? Because like Leipold's from Leipold. Okay.
You're good. You're good.
Yeah,
he is from Wisconsin.
Yeah, because it was like I was thinking, oh man, he's gonna get tempted by both those jobs or one of them, but then he didn't. He was able to sign a contract extension. What was that like? Seeing that Coach Leipold didn't leave for Wisconsin or Nebraska.
Right, and so when Wisconsin made the move to fire Paul Chryst, the panic button wasn't open, like it had the glass case. It was sitting right in front of us. We're like, okay, Wisconsin is on the table, and then Nebraska goes and fires Scott Frost, which it happened in inverse order. Nebraska fired Frost first, but either way, once those two job opportunities were on the table, I think that sets off alarms in athletic director Travis Goff, who has done a tremendous job since taking over since 2021. It sets off alarms in his head, right? And he knows that he's got to lock up his guy, and Lance Leipold, he's the guy. And so they've spent the money, they've invested it in the program. There's going to be additions made to the football field, which is it's about damn time. If you've ever been to Lawrence, been for a football game, first of all, what are you doing? Second of all, it's about time. And so they're making some new renovations, and they're investing a lot in this football program, which again, it all comes back to that believing, and that this athletic department and these fans and the people of Lawrence and the students of the school believe in this football team. And it's been a very long time since you can say that, because you can go back a couple of years and you thought the turning of the page and Les Miles is here and we're going to turn it around, and then that blew up in our face. And then you got Lance Leipold, then people were right to be skeptical because, I mean, yes, he turned around Buffalo, but outside of that, I mean, Wisconsin Whitewater winning a bunch of D3 national championships, it doesn't exactly convert to Power 5 wins, but sure enough, in Lance Leipold's case, it has. So being able to lock up him was huge. And I mean, that was a stepping stone in investing all the money into the football program that the athletic department has. And I think it's back to that sense of believing.
That was so cool in that one game when Kansas was playing Oklahoma, when there was hardly anybody there and Kansas was winning, and they were literally offering free tickets or just free seats to the fans. That was so cool.
Yes. Yep. It was. I have a funny story about that. So it was. My parents were in town, and it was like 35 degrees. Like it was in like raining. Like it wasn't a tailgate day. And we played old school football. That's what people don't know because people tuned into the third quarter. The power went out. It was like raining and like the power lines had freezing rain on top of them and the power went out. So we played old school football, like stopwatch down in distance for a whole quarter. And Kansas was winning. And they sent an email to the entire student body. I still have it in my screenshots to this day. It's the gates are open. Just come in. We're beating Oklahoma at the end of the third quarter. Figure out a way to get to the booth, which is the football stadium, and get in here. And that it is just it's back to that thing. It's back to believing, and that was probably the first thing. Like we showed signs of actually having a chance at beating. They were number 3 at the time and had Caleb Williams, and that was the first piece of starting this whole process in my mind. And then Texas came right after that. But those, I mean, it was huge. It was, you're right. It was absolutely hilarious.
Mm-hmm. So looking ahead to the game, how many? So the over under 69. So do you think that Kansas will definitely need to force the over and get into the 40s to win?
Yes, I kind of do. I don't think you can 27-24 an Arkansas team, not an SEC team. I think you got to be able to score it. 35 is probably your threshold there, which that puts you about 1.5 touchdowns a quarter, if my math is right, which it normally isn't. But I think you can't rock fight an Arkansas team. They're better than Kansas. Yeah, that's addressing the elephant in the room. Kansas is the worst team, of course, but there's obviously a chance they can beat them if they score enough points. And so I think that's what it roots back to is can you outscore Arkansas?
This is an almost impossible question to answer, but what would you set the over-under on how long Lance Leipold will be at Kansas? How many years?
Ooh, how long Lance Leipold will be at Kansas? I think he will stay at Kansas until the end of this contract. So that would put you around 2028, 2029. And then believe it or not, I think Luke Fickell will end up getting a NFL job because I do think Luke Fickell is NFL ready. That's my opinion. And we're going to find out tonight in 4 short hours what he does with this team against Oklahoma State. But I think Luke Fickell will get a job in the NFL, and I do think Lance Leipold will end up in Wisconsin or a Big 12 or Big 12, Big 10 school. I think if you hear the way he talks and addresses himself and carries himself, he's a Midwestern guy, and that's just how he is. I think he will end up with another Big 10 job at some point. I don't think he's a Kansas for lifer, but maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But that is a tough question. But I think definitely until the end of this contract, and maybe he'll get another extension because he's already gotten one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll definitely see for sure, because especially when Luke Fickell starts getting Wisconsin to win the big games, and then Ohio State says, "Oh, well, we'll come back home, Lukey." Absolutely, old buddy.
Exactly. I would take. Yeah, exactly. It's this never ending carousel, and we joke about a coaching carousel all the time, but it's truly what it is. If you're Luke Fickell and you get Wisconsin, like you said, to win some big games, to beat a Michigan, to beat an Ohio State, and Ohio State comes calling, I'm sorry, Madison, but I'm moving over to Ohio State where the grass is way, way greener and the money is way, way bigger.
Well, and also, you could see Coach Leopold, in the future, get some calls from the NFL, kind of like Matt Campbell, where it's like Matt Campbell's getting calls from like, oh, hey, you want to come to Detroit? Oh, want to come to Minnesota? Those your usual suspects in the NFL. thinking we could definitely see that with Coach Leipold. I mean, I don't want to call it early, but you go from 2 wins in your first year to suddenly getting 6 wins in your second year, and then you go up and up and up from there.
It is much tougher in the NFL though because Matt Rule did it and it didn't work out at the Panthers. So I mean, it can work. You can make the jump, but it's very tough too.
Or I want to go back to what Jaxson said for 1 second. Is he's already anticipating a Kansas jump? That's never happened before, and that's how you can tell there's a difference. You can tell people are expecting Kansas to get better and better. Because if you would have talked to me before I went to school, which had been the 2020 season where they didn't win a game, you'd have been like, I don't think Kansas is going to win a game for a couple years. Like, I mean, this team, there was no part of that team that looked any bit promising outside of probably Kenny Logan and Mike Nowitzki, who is still there playing center for Kansas right now. But it's the fact of the attitude change. And that's really what it is in college football because, again, these guys are kids. These guys are our age. They believe an authoritative figure, and in the NFL, you're right, it's different. But the attitude change is the biggest thing, and just like exactly what Jaxson said, like people are expecting Kansas to get better and better, and I think that's the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm. Who's more beloved in Kansas right now, Bill Self or
Lance? Don't do this. Come on now, come on. Bill Self or Lance Leipold? Is that the question? Oh, Bill Self. I mean, this team just won a national championship. It's got to be Bill Self for the time being. Bill Self for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's very awesome season that Kansas had, and the future's just going to get. I sound like a broken record, but it just sounds like it going up.
Exactly. Hey, Kansas football has made it somewhere, though. If Bill Self's starting to argue with Lance Leipold whether it's a football or basketball school like with Kentucky, that was funny.
Yeah, kind of like Calipari and Mark Stoops. It's just wow.
And it's the traits. It's the same thing with Duke too. Honestly, I mean, I'm sure John Shire and the Duke coach are not having. I'm sure those coaches aren't exactly arguing football or basketball, but Duke is also on that trend upward too, in my opinion. And these basketball schools are getting better and better, and it's UCLA too, a DTR, and then they just got themselves a nice shiny quarterback to use next year in this, what, as crazy as it sounds, a gauntlet of a Pac-12. It's times are ever changing in college football, and I think maybe I don't know that I was super opposed to the transfer portal once it started, but now I think I like it. I think I really do like the free agency vibe because it makes things interesting. It's not your Bama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State. It's some of those teams, but it's a little bit different this year with Michigan and TCU being in there. So I think it makes it more interesting, and especially with these basketball schools who, again, they have the athletic department money to invest in these football programs. You guys have seen what Kentucky's done to be able to turn it around, and Duke is on that trending direction too. Same thing with North Carolina too with Drake May.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bright future. But yeah, so that scoring defense, I couldn't help but notice. I think they're 119th in the nation.
Yeah,
I feel that's one of the weaknesses to look out for. So it's like, man, I want to see Kansas win, but it's just like,
I feel like a lot of people want to see Kansas win, but if the defense can get off the field, I think that they can pull it off. And obviously, the experts and the betting odds makers think that this is going to be a close game because of 3-point spread. It's only a field goal. So I'm really excited for this game tomorrow. I think it's going to be a fun one. One of the more fun bowl games we've had, since we started bowl season. So I'm really excited for it.
I think an interesting thing how you just said with Kansas, how everybody wants Kansas to win because they're the underdog. Mm-hmm. It's very ironic that the team they're playing hasn't actually been good that long. Arkansas was in a big rut as well for a long time, and they've only been a better football team for like 3 years. So they haven't arrived where they've been consistently good for like a decade. So Arkansas is still kind of that program too. They've just had a down year compared to last year, but it's not like Kansas is playing Auburn or something like that. Arkansas is not Auburn, so they're both kind of underdogs. Just Kansas is definitely the bigger one for sure.
Right.
Can we get a final score?
Ooh, final score prediction. Yeah, I think it's going to be. Let's go Kansas 45, Arkansas 41. I'm going big time points. If you guys are betting people, I would probably hit the over or at least the team total. I think I'm going big time points. I think it's going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be nice 4:30 game. Sit back, enjoy your popcorn. It's going to be a fun game. I'm excited.
There we go. And before we go, would you like to tell the audience where they can find you if they want to talk about Kansas football with you?
Oh, totally. My Twitter handle is at Jaxson D Reed. It's spelled just like my name on the screen. As you can see, my name's spelled just a little bit different than everybody else. It's Jaxson D Reed, all one word. Tweet at me. Of course, Will tweeted at me. Just, we made some fun stuff happen. So it's, I cover Kansas football. I cover Kansas basketball. I've covered about everything under the sun regarding Kansas athletics. And I've really enjoyed my time so far. So again, if you guys have any, questions, you guys want to talk Jayhawk football, you want to talk Jayhawk basketball, because we're getting into Big 12 play finally. So it's going to be a good time. So I'm excited. It's a great time to be, you guys know, it's a great time to be a sports fan. You got bowl season, all the pro sports are running except for baseball, but who cares, honestly. So, yeah, you guys can find me at Jaxson D Reed on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks so much for coming on, man. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. Good luck, Jayhawks.
Yeah, happy holiday season.